Welcome back, everybody, to the Sunship Sports Channel, and welcome back to Green and Gold till I'm dead and cold. So today we are going to talk about the updated injury news for the Packers, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then we are going to get into some of our offensive line woes and what things might look like moving forward as hopefully we start to get some of these pieces back. I'd like to start out, though, by mentioning the press conference by our defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. He said that he's going to explore all options. I'm sorry, Coach Barry. We did this last year. The only option at this point that I would like Green Bay to explore is if there's someone who can call the defense better. Right now, you have not proven that you are schematically able to change your stripes, which is what Green Bay needs when it plays teams that know how to run the football. I believe we have the players on the team to defend it. I just don't think Coach Barry has the wherewithal to change his scheme when he needs to. And that's ego, folks. And I do not want to watch my team lose any more games due to ego. So I'll leave that there. Probably pick that back up on another episode. But today I've got, like I said, some good, some bad, and some ugly. Well, let's go ahead and start with the ugly. I think that David Bakhtiari is done for the year. He's possibly done for his career. He had to have another surgery. He's out until at least, week 9? That's the earliest he could come back off of the 4-game IR. I don't think he's going to be back week 9. I think Green Bay needs to start looking forward. I think Green Bay needs to look at the possibility of drafting an offensive tackle. They have 3 picks in the first 64 next year. I've heard the name J.C. Latham thrown around at Alabama. He's enormous. He could immediately go in there at right tackle, and we could shift Zach Tom over to left tackle if we needed to. There's a whole bunch of different options, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But yes, as far as the ugly injury news, I think the fact that I believe David Bakhtiari has played his last snap in Green Bay can save over $20 million against the cap next year just by cutting David Bakhtiari. They will end up having, I think it's somewhere around $42.7 million in cap space next year if they just cut David Bakhtiari. They're already planned to have somewhere around 22, and if they cut Big Dave, that will definitely give them a lot more wiggle room when it comes to free agency and possibly going out and signing a solid safety, picking up some backup offensive line support, any number of things. But that contract is definitely an albatross around Green Bay's neck right now, especially for somebody who hasn't been on the field almost at all. Nothing against the player. Love David Bakhtiari, the player. Love David Bakhtiari, the man. Right now, David Bakhtiari is a bad business decision. So that's the ugly. The bad is we have 3 starters that are still not practicing. Not quite sure what's wrong with safety Rudy Ford. He's played better this year than I thought he was going to. So is Darnell Savage at safety. Neither one of them are blowing your socks off, but I think they're both doing better than what I thought they would. Ford had an interception this last game. Zane Anderson, at this point, I don't know why he's still on the 53-man roster. We could replace him with somebody else. He's not contributing that much, but his bad hammy is still keeping him out. But he's not a starter. Rudy Ford is. Devondre Campbell. This one is one of the ones that hurts the most. He's a defensive leader. He calls the plays. He's our main inside linebacker next to second-year guy Quay Walker. Devondre Campbell has a bad ankle. We'll see how long that keeps him out. Jon Runyan. This one hurts as well because, and it hurts even worse because of who we're supposed to get back now, only to have our other guard hobbled. Jon Runyan has a lower leg injury. I believe it's an ankle. Hoping to have him for the Raiders game. If not, definitely after the bye against the Broncos. Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, they've been practicing this week. I think we can mark them off as fine, unless, of course, somebody pulls a hammy again in practice. Can't even believe I said that out loud. Next, let's talk about the good. The good, and I think this is very good. Cornerback Eric Stokes has now started practicing, and he looks really good. He's got a 3-week window where Green Bay can either activate him off the PUP list or shut him down for the season. And I think that they are going to activate him off the PUP list sooner rather than later. He's looked pretty good in practice. Cornerback Jaire Alexander, he's practicing as well. He's had that back injury, but it's good to see him on the practice field. Luke Musgrave with the concussion, he's back out there practicing again. And the big one for our offensive line, Elgin Jenkins, who I didn't think I was going to see until after the bye, is actually back out there, and Elgin Jenkins is practicing. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the injury news. I think if we can have Eric Stokes and Jaire Alexander, along with Rasul Douglas, all in the secondary, all together multiple times, I think that gives Green Bay a decisive advantage against most of the wide receiving corps in the NFL, as long as our pass rush is doing their job. Getting Elgin Jenkins back, and hopefully Jon Runyan is not held out for this Raiders game, would definitely bolster an offensive line that has had its problems, especially against the Detroit Lions. So, coming up next, we are going to talk about the offensive line, the woes and the goes. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Sunship Sports Channel. I'm Chris, your host, and this is Green and Gold Till I'm Dead and Cold. Let's get into that offensive line. So, assuming Jon Runyan is fine, because if he's not, I don't even want to think about Royce Newman in the starting lineup again. I would say let's go with Sean Rhyan at right guard. But assuming Jon Runyan is back, in addition to getting Elgin Jenkins back, who we are all keeping our fingers crossed that he will also play on Monday Night Football, you have 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen. And dare I say you have 5 of your 5, because like I said in the first segment, I don't think we're going to see David Bakhtiari as a Green Bay Packer again. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But everything I've seen points to a different outcome. So, what are our options? Well, I think Sean Rhyan should be our swing guard at this point. I think that Royce Newman has played himself out of it. Sean Rhyan hasn't played a lot, so I don't say that he's played himself into it, but Royce Newman's played himself out of it. Let's see what Sean Rhyan has. You still have Caleb Jones and Yosh Nijman as backup tackles. Now, if I were calling the shots, I would move Zach Tom to left tackle and let Rasheed Walker, Yosh Nijman, and Caleb Jones fight it out for the right tackle position. But I'm not. I'm not in charge. And I don't dislike Rasheed Walker. I mean, Rasheed Walker played 36 games for Penn State over 4 years, and 32 of those he started at left tackle. He was an all Big Ten selection multiple times. Multiple times. He played as a true freshman. This is a guy who blocked pass rushers from places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Ohio State. I mean, there are some real NFL players that he had to block, and it sounds like he did a really good job. Who was his quarterback during this time? Our backup quarterback on Green Bay, Sean Clifford. He had a season where he passed for 3,100 yards, and he had a 1,000-yard receiver in Jahan Dotson. So Rasheed Walker can play. I think why maybe I'm down a little bit is because I saw that entire left side of the offensive line just get absolutely exploded by the Detroit Lions pass rush. Now, after watching the All-22 and some of the other views that I was able to see, most of that was Royce Newman. They just loaded up the left side of our offensive line with pass rushers and just knew that Royce Newman was the weak link. They put Aiden Hutchinson in front of Newman all game long instead of over the end. That caused some problems. And not that Rasheed Walker played great that game, because he didn't. He didn't. But being next to a guy, now remember, Rasheed Walker's a second-year guy. Being next to a guy who you have zero faith in, I'm sure that played a little bit into those mental games, and he may even have not always been thinking about the guy he's blocking, maybe trying to help out Royce a little too much. I would like to see how Rasheed Walker can perform in that left tackle spot when Elgin Jenkins is out there. Because as good as Aiden Hutchinson is, he's not just going to blow over Elgin Jenkins. Jenkins is one of the best guards in football and would at least put up a fight. I think that you would see a better Rasheed Walker, or a better version of Rasheed Walker, with Big E in the game. Josh Myers, again, not great, but he's played better than I thought. Jon Runyan, I think, is a really good right guard. I just hope this ankle injury isn't going to keep him out for any period of time. I hope it doesn't keep him out at all. We have until Monday night for him to heal up, and then we have a bye after that. So hopefully he gets out there. And, of course, Zach Tom. Zach Tom is, in my opinion, the second best player on the offensive line next to Jenkins. And Zach Tom can play many positions. I think one thing that Green Bay is definitely going to do this offseason, because they always do this through the draft, is they're going to add some offensive linemen, and I think they're going to add them early. I think that somebody like a J.C. Latham from Alabama or a Joe Alt from Notre Dame could step in right away and start on Green Bay's offensive line. So Green Bay needs to do what it needs to do to shore that up during the draft process, but it does give us options. Zach Tom, as I said, they kicked around the idea of maybe moving Zach Tom to center. I mean, maybe Rasheed Walker solidifies the left tackle spot by the end of this year, but Josh Myers drops off. And next year, Zach Tom is our center, and we have J.C. Latham at right tackle. I mean, there are options. Green Bay, especially with our two starting guards of Jenkins and Runyan, are solid players. Green Bay has a lot of nice pieces to build on with this offensive line. They just have to stay healthy. I mean, injuries are the mother of all equalizers. So when you think you have a top O-line and then all of a sudden you lose your top two Pro Bowlers on it, it changes things. And Detroit exposed us badly. And Matt LaFleur did not make the appropriate adjustments as quickly as he needed to. But that's another episode. This episode is largely about what our offensive line is going to do moving forward. I think Rasheed Walker is going to stay at left tackle. I think Zach Tom's going to stay at right tackle. I think with Elgin Jenkins next to Rasheed Walker, Walker's performance is going to improve drastically. Josh Myers, obviously still our center, doing a admirable job this year. I don't think he's anything to write home about, but Josh Myers is playing pretty well. Jon Runyan, I think, is a really good right guard. And if we get him back healthy sometime soon, the offensive line could again be a strength. Remember, I know it was just the preseason, but in the preseason, even against starting lineups, good starting lineups, and this was without David Bakhtiari even playing, because he didn't play in the preseason, or at least not a whole lot, Jordan Love was the cleanest quarterback of all 32 teams. He didn't get touched. When that offensive line was healthy, nobody got to him. All right, everybody, we'll see you a little bit later in the week for our next episode when I preview the Packers-Raiders game. Hopefully, I'll have some more injury news for you by then. We'll know who's going to be playing, or at least have a better idea of that. Go Pack Go, and we will see you next time.